Okay then. There we go. So this is part 2 of the video with Jack Dodds. Obviously, we've gone through all the introductory stuff in the previous video, so go back and watch that. I actually enjoyed it. I think it was a really good, kind of light-hearted discussion about Sunderland YouTube and all the different things. It was just basically a waffle on from my part, certainly on my part for 15 minutes, but I enjoyed it. But anyway, Jack, let's get into Sunderland. Let's get into the juicy bit that I'm sure people, shying away from it. Okay, at the time of recording, and this won't be going out for a few days, but at the time of recording, it's Sunday. The Wigan game. Firstly, discuss. Just short and simple, discuss it. What's going on?
It's a tricky one because, of course, you can't just accept results like that. And I'm never in a million years going to say that's what we should be doing. But then a part of us thinks, given the circumstances yesterday, I don't know. I'm struggling to put it into words. I was going to say, given the circumstances of yesterday, the result isn't maybe as bad as it seems. But then a loss against the worst team in the league, who had 8 points before they played us, 1-2, drawn 2, lost 10. I think is their record. You can't defend it. Onto the actual game itself, obviously we had most of the possession. We did create a few chances. I think there's a few people that said we didn't create anything. We did. We could have scored a few times. I think Wigan scored with their only real chance of the game.
Well, it wasn't just their only real chance at the stats. They only had one shot.
Was actually
one shot, scored it.
Well, there you go. Then I do definitely think we were the better team, but I would expect that. Should we have created more chances? Yeah, probably. But did we create enough to win the game? Yeah. I don't know. I'm struggling to put it down to that. It was nice to see McGeady back, but I think as with always, we did lack a little bit of creativity. Of course, we haven't really got a goal scorer. I know people can look at Will Griggs' history, but obviously at the moment he's not doing it for Sunderland. We haven't got a goal scorer at the moment. So you know, I'm struggling to put it down to one thing, because there's so many things that if that had been better yesterday, we could have come away with a different result.
Yeah, more than like. But I mean, at the end, I'm not. But I think it's very unfair to put any sort of blame. I haven't seen anyone do it so far, but I think it'd be very unfair to apportion any blame to Lee Johnson for that result, because.
Oh God, yeah. I mean,
he was only in 2 hours before the game started.
I mean,
actually, to be fair to him, he's come in and just like, nope, I'm not going to watch from the stands. I'm going straight into him. That's to use the word to quote his own word, bold. That's very bold of him to do that. So
yeah, it was announced on Saturday morning. My personal theory is that he put pen to paper on Friday night and they just waited.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Yeah,
I think they waited to announce it as a way of obviously they put the video out about McGeady. Then there was the statement announcement. I think they were like, oh, let's announce the manager a couple hours tomorrow, and then people will be so buzzing for this game as opposed to doing it all in the same night.
Do you know what it's for? It sells streaming passes.
Yeah,
that's probably why they did it.
That's my personal theory. But even if he did sign last night, he probably hasn't taken any training sessions with the players. He might have had a couple of meetings with them at absolute most, maybe one last night, one this morning or something. I was expecting Andy Taylor really to be picking the team, or at the very least telling Lee Johnson who to pick, because how can he be expected to pick a team when he's not even seen them train, or probably hasn't really seen much of them play? I would imagine he's went back and watched a couple of games at least. But no, fair play to him. It speaks volumes that he said, no, I'll take charge. I'll be on the touchline. He could have very easily said, I don't feel comfortable with this. Andy Taylor, you're taking charge. I'm going in the stand. But he didn't. And fair play when I'm not putting any blame on him absolutely whatsoever. To me, he's got. You don't even judge a manager until they've had a few games. To me, that we need to have a few games before, probably maybe towards Christmas time, before we can even really say, like probably around about the game on Boxing Day, roughly. I don't know who we've got, but we'll probably have a game on Boxing Day. Oh God, well.
Can't wait for George Honeyman to get a hat trick against us that day. Just written in the stars.
I mean, to me, you've got to give him a bit of time, to figure out what he wants to do and implement it, and then you judge him.
Yeah, I know. I agree with that. I think there might have been a few people on Facebook, but Facebook's Facebook. I don't tend to take notice of fan groups on there personally. personally anyway. And I think if there has been anyone saying Lee Johnson out, then they've got to be taking the mick. If they're not taking the mick, then well, okay.
I was tempted to put straight out as a joke.
Yeah, I would imagine a lot of it would be Mickey take. But yeah, well, let's get on to Lee Johnson actually, because obviously, first of all, I'll quickly go on to Phil Parkinson because I'm not going to try and talk about him very much because we're moving on. But obviously, as I'm sure people who watched you know that you were probably one of the staunchest Parkinson defenders. You were very loyal to him, and that's fair enough. Everyone's got their own views. What were your thoughts on the way it was ending with Parkinson and the fact that he obviously got sacked? I mean, it must have been harder. I mean, I respect you for saying, look, I still defend him. I still think he's done this, that, and the other. It must have been, I mean, were you finding it difficult to defend him as time was going on? Like, I'm talking the last couple of weeks of his tenure.
Yeah, I was fighting losing battle,
yeah.
and I'd chosen the wrong side of the fence to be on, definitely, and it was getting harder every
Well,
week.
I wouldn't say it was wrong. It was just your own view.
Yeah, it was just it was getting harder and harder every week to defend him and find ways of excusing him. And then there was a point in time when I thought, actually, yeah, people are right about this. It was probably, who did we put up? Was it Fleetwood? Was it Doncaster then Fleetwood? It was probably I think it was the Fleetwood game for me where I was like, yeah, I think it's time for him to go now. But even after the Doncaster game, that was maybe a turning point for a lot of people who were similar to me. But I looked at the Doncaster game as it was an individual error that cost us that game. It had nothing to do with Parkinson. So
I saw it as a mixture of both. I think
he could have.
The Doncaster game annoyed me, and well, everyone knows me. I like clean sheets, and I'm quite livid that we've only kept one.
That's why I defended Parkinson so much, is because of the clean sheets.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, Parky, to be fair to him, did shore us up a lot at the back. Well, until recently, shored us up a lot at the back, and I think that definitely. I'm always of the opinion that if you keep a clean sheet, you give yourself a fantastic chance because you only need one to win. I'm not expecting Sunderland to earn promotion doing that every week, but more times than not, teams that go up aren't just good going forward; they're very good at the back as well. You've got to have the fight. It's about balance of both. The Doncaster game, I think, was one where all game I thought Sunderland defended really, really well, defended comfortably, and it really annoyed me that we defended that well just to switch off like that and chuck it away in the 93rd minute. But at the same time, I don't think the players were helped by the fact Parkinson just was letting them get tired and getting sucked back over and over again, and not trying to bring fresh energy on. Which I think had he done that, we would have got a win.
The turning point for me, the turning point for me was definitely his game management. When I could see it happening game after game after game, where if we'd made a substitution, if we'd changed tact a little bit, if we'd just altered the formation ever so slightly, we probably would have saw out the last 20 minutes of that game. Maybe we would have created a chance towards the end of that other game. Yeah. To me, that's what it was to me. It was his poor game management and his lack of ability to change things, and he seemed to be so dogmatic in his approach. That to me was eventually what got to us. But in terms of why I defended Parkinson for so long, he showed us up at the back, as you just said. No one, I mean, apart from towards the end of his time, no one can dispute that. Defensively, we've been the best we've been for years under Parkinson. I think I compared him quite a lot to Jack Ross, and I know Jack Ross had a significantly better points per game ratio, but the squad's incomparable. And I think
Jack Ross had a much better squad. Certainly
I think a lot of
year or so of his tenure than Phil Parkinson had.
A lot of people forget that first season in League One. Yeah, fair play. You can compare the points per game, but a lot of people forget. Look at the squad Jack Ross had. Like in that time,
Adam Matthews, Lee Campbell, Brian Oviedo, Josh Madger.
Madger, Reece James is another one that springs to mind. Even the likes of Dylan McGeoch, I rated him, and there was absolutely loads of players who went in that time, and Parkinson had an entirely different squad. So I compared them two managers a lot, and I thought, well, I don't you can really say that Ross is a better manager when you look at how. I mean, Jack Ross had a probably about 30 plus goal a season striker in Madger. He probably would have got us about 30 goals.
Yeah.
Been there the entire season. Parkinson hasn't had that. He hasn't had a player who you can just give the ball to anywhere within about 20 yards of the goal and he's going to score. But Jack Ross did have that, and I thought, who was there to get in? Who's going to definitely show up and improve this team? I do have faith in Lee Johnson. I would have had faith.
Yeah, I was going to bring on to that. What were your thoughts on Lee Johnson?
I would have had faith in the Cowleys. I would have had faith in Paul Cook. To an extent, I would have had faith in Poirier. There's a few other names in there, of course. Pearson and Keane are probably the two that spring to mind. I've made my thoughts clear on the idea of Kevin Phillips being manager a few times.
Well, we never know. I think people know our thoughts on that.
Yeah. But I thought if we're going to get rid of him, we've got to get someone in who we can guarantee is going to improve the squad. And I was starting to come round to the idea that actually maybe the squad isn't as good as we make out, and maybe we do lack. If you take McGeady out, we do lack individuals with quality, and maybe we don't actually have a squad that's diverse enough to have multiple systems in place. And maybe Parkinson was struggling to come to terms with. Maybe we do have to change things because he didn't see how he was going to be able to do it. And to me, I just thought you've got for you to be Parkinson out, you've got to then say this manager's going to come in and he's going to improve things because he can do this with the squad. And at the time, I just didn't say anyone could do that. But eventually, I came out thinking, well, to be honest with you, I think everyone can see the problem here.
I think for me, when people go on, well, everyone knows that the words "just not good enough" are words that I hate when it comes towards the squad, because for me, that tends to excuse a lot of mediocre performances. I do think this way. Put it this way. If I was to word it right, I don't think the squad we've got is good enough to get us promoted. I think I've come round to that opinion now. And when I say get promoted, I mean, like, I think the squad should be good enough to get us into the top 6, but I don't think it would be good enough to win the playoffs. So by that definition, it's not good enough to get us promoted. I do, however, at the same time, think the squad should have been good enough to beat MK Dons, Bristol Rovers, Wigan, Rochdale, Burton. Those games, I'm not buying that squad shouldn't have beaten those teams, because it should have done. In my opinion, there should have been enough to beat teams down the bottom end of the league. And what frustrates me is the fact that, I think as at the time of recording, the gap's now 8 points a second. But until recent weeks, hardly anyone seemed to want to run away with getting promoted. And I just think if Sunderland had turned up in those games, well, yeah, Parkinson would probably still be here. But regardless, though, so are you happy with the appointment of Lee Johnson?
Relatively, yeah. It was probably the third or fourth choice. Cook and Cowley would have been my first, second choice. Whatever way around, I would have taken either of them. Then after that, it was probably Johnson, then Poirier, or maybe Poirier, then Johnson. But yeah, I had a look at his record, and I did a video on my channel yesterday, and I thought, well, that's one thing we were discussing. We were saying, like, look at the record that he's got. Like, look at the accolade that got. Look at what he's going to bring. The job he did at Oldham was brilliant. He took them from a relegation side to a pretty fairly stable League One club, I believe. He then went on to Barnsley, of course. Yeah, it was a little bit hit and miss there, but then he got his move to Bristol City, and he did a fantastic job there. And he took them from a team that was battling relegation to a team that's now fighting for promotion. And as much as he didn't get promotion, it's so difficult to get promoted from the Championship. A lot of the time you're competing against astronomically sized clubs with huge budgets, clubs with experience of going up. Aston Villa and Norwich, the two that come to mind straight away. So maybe it wasn't entirely down to Lee Johnson, and apparently there was a Bristol City podcaster who was saying that, or YouTube or something, who was saying that he thinks Lee Johnson took a lot of the flack
for one of the director of football's. I saw something like that. I think one of the things that impressed me, one of the things that I'm quite happy about with Lee Johnson is that he got Bristol City from, first of all, relegation contenders to potential promotion contenders, as you've said. But at the same time, bringing players in, spawning something in them, and selling them on for a huge profit. Now, for me, Sunderland long term are probably going to have to go down that route in order to make ourselves financially sustainable, because we haven't got any parachute payments anymore, and we can't keep relying on owners to keep putting in. Well, I know Stuart Donald hasn't done anywhere near that recently, but we can't rely on what happened with Ellis Short, for example, where we've got an owner who just pumped money into the club
because we haven't got them anymore.
Unfortunately, we've got to make ourselves much more sustainable doing that. Which brings me on to, and I'm going to get his name wrong, Christian Speakman, which is obviously the new sporting director who came in from Birmingham City. I wanted to ask what your thoughts on his appointment in terms of, does this signify a change in direction that we are now going in as a club, and the fact that Lee Johnson is a head coach and not a manager? Because people got to remember, they're two different things. They're two very different things. So I think there's I think this appointment signifies a change in direction for Sunderland going forward. But I don't know what you think.
Of course, it's a change of direction. I don't think they would have appointed a director of football. I don't think they would have appointed Lee Johnson as a head coach as opposed to a manager if we weren't going to change in direction. To be honest with you, I'm not entirely knowledgeable about the system of a director of football and head coach as opposed to just a manager. I struggle to pinpoint exactly what the differences are. I know roughly that Speakman's probably going to be a bit more in charge of transfers, negotiations, things along those lines, and then Johnson's responsibility will largely be more just on the training ground and on a match day. But I think, of course, it's somewhat of a change of direction. In terms of Speakman's appointment, I think you mentioned that first there. Look, I don't know loads about the bloke. Of course, I don't exactly know. I can't pinpoint exactly what it is he's doing, but to me, he was the academy director of Birmingham City, and you look at some of the names that they've had through their academy in the last few years. Jude Bellingham is the first one that springs to mind. Damari Gray is another one. I think Che Adams might have come through their academy, possibly.
Very possible, yeah.
Yeah,
Jack Butland to a lesser degree, even though he's really gone off the ball the last couple of years. But there was a point where he was really considered in England's setup. So,
so no, I definitely he comes with a decent history, and it definitely does signify a change in direction and maybe a little bit less responsibility on the manager to bring players in and just to work with the squad.
Yeah.
As much as provided they can be in regular contact and actually he can get across to Speakman what he wants. Maybe that's exactly what we've needed for the past few years, but it hasn't happened. You know, you just don't know.
Time will tell on that. I think the biggest difference when I noticed between a head coach and a manager, if say Lee Johnson, the head coach, first of all, I think that's one of the reasons why he was appointed, because he's worked under a director of football or a sporting director system before, and in an ideal sense that makes him fit. And I think he's probably the best we could have got with that setup and where we are as a club. I think that's probably the best we could have got. But also, when a head coach comes in, if we can establish an identity the way we want to play, I know a lot of people go on about it, but it is true. If we can establish an identity, figure out what we want to be, and then get players who will fit that, get head coaches who will fit get head coaches who will fit that, and then if say that head coach gets sacked, it's less strenuous to try and get an appointment in, because the next one, like you've got to find this. Well, exactly. Have the setup and the style already in place. Right? Okay, this guy plays the style. Go and work with what's there, and theoretically it should work. But obviously, Sunderland always put theories to the test in a negative way, so we will have to wait and see. The last thing I'll touch on before we finish is I wanted to get your thoughts. Now, I don't know if you watched Lee Johnson's post-match interview following the Wigan game. Right, one of the things that I want to say, where we mention pace and power all the time.
Oh I read that about you.
Yeah, okay. Lee Johnson, for me, seems to straight away have identified we need a bit more of that going forward. Why is it you think that and one of the things that frustrates me a lot about Sunderland is we recognise we need this, and this, but the club seems very oblivious to it and never just gets it in the window. For me, do you have hope that Lee Johnson could do that if he's noticed that after one game of watching us?
I mean, it speaks volumes of who he can be as a manager. If he's noticed that after one game, he's probably at most went back and watched a few of our past few games. As you say, we've noticed it as fans. I don't know any fan who doesn't think we need more pace going forward. We had the opportunity in the window to sign a number of players.
As you said, there's 2 months between when the season was officially finished, apart from the playoffs and the salary cap. I didn't get players in before then. And
if he can identify that, then he seems like the type of manager to me who will be in a meeting right now with Speakman saying, right, January, this is who we need to bring in. Because and I genuinely hope and genuinely think that's the way we could be going. He seems like that type of proactive manager. If he can notice that after one game and he's already pointed out and said, this is what needs to improve, I think to me, he's clearly noticed that we're lacking a real bit star power going forward. He's brought McGeady back straight away. He seems like a real proactive type of manager, the complete polar opposite of Parkinson. So,
yes.
So as much as I was defending Parkinson, I can now admit that I was probably I could probably eat my words a little bit now. So it gives us hope that he said that, and it gives us hope with what I'd already seen yesterday. We already looked actually. I don't know. I don't want to say we looked better, but to me, we looked as if we.
There was a bit more intent, I think.
Yeah,
at least there was. Yeah,
I could see. As you see that, I could see the intention of us improving. So I'm really hopeful about them.
My final question, really final question I'll ask you, and we'll keep it short and brief. I think as if, say, neither of us are expecting to get in the top two, which, by the way, for a club of Sunderland size in League One's embarrassing. From perspective, we haven't got a team to do that, in my opinion. Have you written off getting into the top six?
No,
this is a really terrible. It sounds a really terrible question, but I've written off. I think I'm starting to write off top two the way we're going, but I haven't written off playoffs. But I think if we're not going to go up, then we've got to use the rest of this 6 months to build a squad that'll win the league next year. But I'm getting bored of saying that. I've said that the last couple of years.
I mean, that's what I said in the first season. That's what I said all the way throughout last season, and I probably was starting to say it at some point the season before. I'm not being funny. I haven't written off winning the league. As daft as that sounds, we can still do it. Do I think we'll do it? No. Do I think we'll get top two? Probably not. Do I think we'll get playoffs? Maybe not. But I haven't written off anything because we haven't seen anything of Lee Johnson that we can actually that we can actually be critical of. As I say, he gets a few weeks to sort things out, and then you start judging him. To me, maybe towards the end of January is when you really start looking at, well, actually, how has he done with signings and how are we doing now with them? And maybe it's at that point that I'll start writing things off. But to me, I'm not going to write anything off. I'm not even going to write relegation off. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to write anything off until I can actually see what it is he's bringing. Where do I think we'll finish? Really difficult to say right now. I think playoffs is I think we'll get playoffs as a minimum. To be honest with you, I think top two is very unlikely, and I don't think we'll win the league. But I'm not going to write anything off at this stage because we could genuinely win our next 15 games under Lee Johnson. He could have literally find that one winning formula. We'll bring in a few players in January and we'll just go on a 15-game winning streak. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but there's nothing to say that can't happen. Look what happened in the Parkinson last season where we went on like a 10-game streak of like we didn't lose any, barely conceded a goal. We might have lost like one of those games or something along those lines where we won about 6 in a row. Not to say that can't happen again, but actually we won't fall off because then think of something different, and we'll keep reinventing ourselves. It genuinely could happen.
Well, let's hope so. Jack, thanks very much for coming on here. I'll leave go and watch Jack's channel. Let's get how many subs are you trying to reach for the end of the year?
150 by the end of the year. I'm on. The last time I checked this morning, I was on 85. Which it's going to be.
Come on.
It's going to be a stretch, a real stretch. I've got about.
I disagree. I think you can get that fairly easily.
23 days. No, about
right. Come on, guys. In here, get Jack's channel up to 150 subs at the end of the year. Maybe even go for 250 if we're lucky. But we shall see.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Anyway, thanks very much for watching, everybody. This probably is a bit long-winded, but it's been a pleasure having Jack on. Someone that whose opinion I respect a lot. And see you all for the Lincoln game on Saturday, where we'll probably get beat because we're Sunderland. Take care.